A flight where a single moment changes everything. When a routine request turns into an act of shocking disrespect. What happened next left the entire cabin stunned and led to consequences no one saw coming. Stay with us to hear the full story that unfolded 30,000 feet above the ground. Before we start, comment below where you're watching from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. What would you do if someone entrusted with serving and ensuring your comfort crossed every boundary and did the unthinkable? This story began with a flight that was supposed to be uneventful, routine trip for Mia Donovan, a motivational speaker and best-selling author celebrated for her inspiring talks on resilience and empowerment. Mia, dressed sharply in a tailored blazer, settled into her business class seat with her signature calm demeanor. She was en route to a major event, one that promised to be another milestone in her already remarkable career. The hum of the engines filled the cabin as passengers adjusted their belongings, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Mia was preparing a quick update for her followers on her phone, her focus on connecting with the millions who looked up to her daily. Around her, the atmosphere was typical for a flight. Flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisle, distributing beverages with practiced smiles. But even in this routine setting, one crew member stood out, Abigail Burke, a senior flight attendant with a sharp edge to her demeanor. Her clipped tone and brisk movements suggested irritation, though no one seemed to pay much attention. It all began when Mia pressed the call button to request a drink change. A simple request. Her iced tea had come sweetened instead of unsweetened. Abigail approached with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, her voice tinged with irritation. "What's the problem?" Abigail asked, her tone more accusatory than helpful. Mia, always polite, explained the mix-up calmly. Abigail's face tightened further. "Well, this is what you ordered," she snapped, placing the blame squarely on Mia. Passengers in nearby rows began to glance over. Mia held her ground, her voice measured. "I'm sorry, but I didn't order this. I would appreciate the correct drink," she said. Abigail's lips pressed into a thin line as she grabbed the glass, muttering something under her breath. Mia heard it clearly, an unkind remark that felt personal. She glanced around briefly, noting the quiet tension spreading in the cabin, but decided to let it go for the moment, hoping the issue would end there. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Minutes later, Abigail returned with the correct drink, but her attitude hadn't improved. She placed the glass down harder than necessary, causing the contents to spill slightly onto Mia's tray. Instead of apologizing, Abigail shot Mia a cold look, muttering just loud enough for her to hear, "Some people don't know how to fly." The words stung, not because they were new to Mia, but because she had fought hard against such prejudices her entire life. Her success, her fame, none of it seemed to matter in moments like these. Mia looked directly at Abigail, her voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, but that was unnecessary." Abigail's face flushed, and her composure began to crack. She muttered something about being stressed and hurried away. But the tension in the cabin was undeniable now. Passengers exchanged looks, their whispers just barely audible. Mia knew better than to make a scene, but she also knew she wouldn't let this slide if it continued. For now, she took a deep breath, deciding to focus on her work and let it pass. But sometimes, letting it go is not an option. And this was about to become one of those times. The incident simmered in Mia's mind as the plane continued its ascent. She tried to distract herself with her notes for the upcoming event, but the tension in the air was palpable. Abigail passed by her seat several times, each time casting a fleeting glance that carried a mix of resentment and superiority. Mia noticed it, but chose to stay calm, reminding herself that confrontations rarely ended well in such confined spaces. About 20 minutes into the flight, Mia needed a blanket. The air conditioning in the cabin had turned colder, and she pressed the call button again, her intentions clear and straightforward. Abigail approached, her movements sharp and almost aggressive this time. "What is it now?" she asked curtly, her voice louder than necessary, drawing attention from nearby passengers. Mia remained composed and explained that she simply needed a blanket. Abigail's expression darkened further, and she let out an exaggerated sigh, clearly making a show of her dissatisfaction. "We're out of blankets," she said flatly, her tone carrying an edge of mockery. Mia glanced around. She had seen other passengers being offered blankets moments earlier. "I saw some blankets being handed out just a few rows ahead," Mia said, her voice still calm but tinged with firmness. "If there's an issue, I'd like to understand it." Abigail stiffened at Mia's words, her cheeks reddening. Her next move shocked everyone. Instead of responding verbally, she leaned down closer, narrowing her eyes as if challenging Mia. "I don't know who you think you are," she hissed under her breath, loud enough for Mia and the passengers nearest her to hear. The cabin grew eerily quiet. Mia could feel every pair of eyes on her now, the weight of their judgment pressing in. A few murmurs began to ripple through the rows as passengers whispered among themselves. Mia could sense the disbelief and discomfort spreading. She had been here before, on the receiving end of unprovoked hostility disguised as authority. Her instinct told her this wasn't going to end without escalation. Mia straightened her back, meeting Abigail's glare with unwavering composure. "I'm someone who deserves basic respect," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "And I think you've forgotten that's part of your job." Abigail's lips parted as if to respond, but before she could, a passenger from 2 rows ahead interjected. "She's right," the man said, his tone carrying a hint of irritation. "I saw blankets being handed out, and she's just asking for one. Why the attitude?" Abigail's head whipped toward the man, her expression shifting into one of barely contained fury. Her professionalism, already thin, was unraveling quickly. Instead of acknowledging her mistake, she chose to double down. "I'm not here to be lectured," she snapped, her voice rising enough for most of the cabin to hear. She turned back to Mia, her tone condescending. "If you're going to be difficult, maybe you should rethink how you speak to people doing their job." The moment hung heavy in the air. Mia could feel her heartbeat quicken, but she refused to show any sign of intimidation. More passengers were now visibly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and exchanging glances. It was becoming clear to everyone that this situation was spiraling out of control. Then, in a move no one expected, Abigail took a step closer to Mia, her voice lowering into a near whisper but carrying a venomous edge. "People like you always think you can push others around, but not this time." Mia froze, her mind racing as the words sank in. The implication in Abigail's tone was unmistakable, and she knew this had gone far beyond a blanket or even disrespect. It was now about something deeper and uglier. The passengers near her began to murmur louder, their shock and unease turning into visible concern. Mia realized that this wasn't just her battle anymore. This was now a moment where she had to stand her ground, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been made to feel less than. Before she could respond, a voice from further back in the cabin broke the silence. "This is unacceptable. Someone needs to address this immediately." Abigail turned sharply, her authority crumbling as the situation spiraled further out of her control. The pressure in the cabin was rising, and Mia knew the tipping point was near.